Welcome back to Royal Vault UK, where we uncover the hidden stories, rivalries, and untold secrets of the British royal family. Today, we step quietly into a moment when love and power collided, and the crown itself trembled. This is the story of a king who chose the woman he loved over the throne that defined him. Behind the gilded doors of Buckingham Palace and the solemn corridors of St. James, whispers grew into a national reckoning as Edward VIII faced a decision that would echo through generations. In the winter of 1936, with the nation watching and the empire poised in uncertainty, a private devotion became a public crisis. At the center stand Edward VIII and Wallis Simpson, bound by a romance that challenged custom, church, and state. Around them gather courtiers, ministers, and family, each weighing loyalty, duty, and the fragile balance that keeps a monarchy intact. Tonight, we revisit the choice that redrew the line between personal happiness and royal obligation, and we ask what it truly costs a sovereign to be human. To understand Edward's abdication, we must return to the years before the crown ever touched his head to a prince shaped by loneliness, duty, and desire for freedom. Born in 1914 into the House of Windsor, Edward grew up beneath the immense shadow of royal expectation. His father, King George V, embodied discipline and restraint. His mother, Queen Mary, lived by formality and silence. Within this structure, the young Edward sought warmth where the crown offered only duty. As Prince of Wales, he was charismatic, modern, and beloved by the public. Crowds filled the streets to see him. Newspapers called him the People's Prince. Yet behind the charm lay restlessness, a man who often spoke of feeling caged by destiny. While his parents viewed service as sacred, Edward viewed it as a burden. He longed for something real, something human, and that longing would one day test the strength of the monarchy itself. It was during one of London's glittering social seasons that he met Wallis Simpson, an American woman of wit, grace, and striking confidence. Twice married, she was everything royal convention forbade. But to Edward, she was freedom, the laughter, candor, and companionship missing from the palace corridors. Their friendship deepened quickly, hidden behind the closed curtains of royal life. Soon, Wallis became his constant companion, joining him at Balmoral Sandringham and aboard private voyages once reserved for royalty alone. By 1935, whispers began to circle through high society. Ministers grew uneasy, and the press, under quiet orders, refused to print what everyone already knew. Inside the palace, Queen Mary pleaded with her son to reconsider. His father, already ailing, despaired that, "After my death, the boy will ruin himself within 12 months." When George V passed in January of 1936, the prophecy seemed set in motion. Edward became king, and with that crown came a love that defied empire, faith, and the government sworn to uphold them. As King Edward VIII ruled for less than a single year yet in those brief months, he challenged every rule that had preserved the monarchy for centuries. From the first day of his reign, he made one thing unmistakably clear: he would not live a lie. At dinners within Buckingham Palace, ministers watched in silence as Wallis Simpson took her place beside the king, not hidden away but seated as if she already belonged to history. Courtiers whispered that she wore jewels once reserved for queens. Behind the scenes, palace staff noticed letters marked private, sent daily between the king and Wallis, sealed with affection instead of protocol. The British government, led by Prime Minister Stanley Baldwin, grew alarmed. Under the law and the Church of England, a monarch could not marry a divorced woman whose former husband was still alive. To Baldwin, the issue was not simply moral, it was constitutional. In Parliament, voices murmured that the king's personal life had become a threat to national stability. Across the Commonwealth, Dominion leaders expressed quiet concern. The empire was built on tradition, and now that foundation trembled. By autumn of 1936, the tension reached its breaking point. Baldwin met the king in private at Fort Belvedere, the monarch's retreat outside Windsor. He delivered the ultimatum with the calm of a man who knew he was ending a reign. "Your Majesty must choose the throne, or Mrs. Simpson." Edward's reply was measured, yet filled with heartbreak. He believed he could not reign without the woman he loved by his side. "I have found peace," he said, "only with her." Behind closed doors, his family was divided. Queen Mary wept in silence, unable to comprehend her son's defiance. His brothers, the Duke of York, later King George VI, and the Duke of Kent, urged him to think of duty, not desire. But Edward saw love not as weakness, but as liberation. Even his newspapers abroad began to print headlines of the king's scandalous affair. The British press remained bound by silence. It was a silence heavy with anticipation, broken only in early December when the story could no longer be contained. The public awoke to the unthinkable. Their king was prepared to surrender his crown. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, some in tears, others in disbelief. A monarchy that had weathered wars, revolutions, and crises of faith now faced its most human trial of all, love. Inside the palace, the mood was mournful. Servants walked the halls in whispers. The air itself felt heavy, as if history were holding its breath. Edward wrote letter after letter to Wallis, calling her my beloved, my reason, my peace. But the closer the government moved toward confrontation, the clearer it became. The empire would not accept a queen named Simpson. And so, on the night of December 10th, 1936, Edward signed the instrument of abdication, a simple sheet of parchment that carried the weight of centuries. With a pen stroke, he renounced the throne of the United Kingdom and all dominions of the British Empire. His final act as king was not one of command, but of surrender. He had given up the crown for love. The morning after Edward's abdication, the world awoke to a changed monarchy. Across Britain, radios crackled with the voice of a man who, only hours earlier, had been king. Speaking with the calm of resignation and the tremor of heartbreak, Edward declared, "I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king without the help and support of the woman I love." It was the first time the people had heard their sovereign speak not as a ruler, but as a man stripped of ceremony. In homes and pubs, listeners sat in silence, unsure whether to feel sorrow or betrayal. Some admired his courage, others condemned his selfishness. But all understood that the monarchy once untouchable had revealed its human face. In the days that followed, Edward left Britain for exile, sailing quietly from Portsmouth to the continent. The man once destined to rule an empire became the Duke of Windsor, a title offered by his younger brother, now King George VI. He would never again live in England as a member of the royal household. Wallis joined him soon after. Their wedding, held in June 1937 at a private chateau in France, was modest and solemn. No member of the royal family attended. In the photographs, the couple smiled gently, a smile that carried both triumph and loss. Back in London, the new king faced the daunting task of restoring faith in the crown. George VI, shy and dutiful, became the very image of stability that his brother had rejected. His wife, Queen Elizabeth, embodied the endurance of tradition. In time, their daughter, the young Princess Elizabeth, would ascend the throne, shaped by the lessons her uncle's decision had left behind. For historians, Edward's abdication remains a turning point, the moment when monarchy and modern love collided. It exposed the fragile balance between personal happiness and public expectation, between the man and the symbol. It reminded Britain that the crown's strength lies not in perfection, but in its ability to endure even when fractured. In choosing love over duty, Edward became both romantic hero and cautionary tale. His story continues to echo through the generations that followed, a quiet warning whispered through the corridors of Buckingham Palace, that even a king cannot rewrite the rules of the crown without consequence. In the end, the story of King Edward VIII is not only about a man who gave up a throne, it is about the cost of choosing the heart over history. His decision reshaped the monarchy, altered the course of royal succession, and forever changed how the British people viewed their kings. Far from the grandeur of Buckingham Palace, Edward spent the rest of his life in quiet exile with Wallis by his side. They lived between France and America, hosting dinners, receiving guests, and maintaining a polite distance from the family he had once led. Yet beneath the charm and grace, there lingered an unspoken melancholy, the awareness that love, though victorious, had also become a lifelong reminder of loss. When Edward looked back on his decision, he reportedly told a friend that he had no regrets. But history is less certain. His abdication left a wound within the royal lineage, one that would shape how future monarchs approach matters of the heart. Every royal marriage, Every private choice made in the decades to come carried a faint echo of that December night when a king chose to be simply a man. For the British monarchy, his sacrifice was paradoxical. It nearly broke the institution, yet it forced the royal family to evolve, to rediscover humility in a changing world. Without Edward's fall, perhaps the modern crown would never have found its balance between tradition and humanity. And so, as we close this chapter, one truth remains timeless. Power can command loyalty, but it can never command love. In the corridors of history, Edward's voice still lingers, a reminder that even the mightiest crown cannot outweigh the beating of a human heart. If you enjoyed this story, remember to like, share, and subscribe to Royal Vault UK, your window into the secrets behind the crown, where every choice, every sacrifice, and every untold truth continues to shape the destiny of the British monarchy.